Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as the fourth Doctor's era casts off and becomes its own thing. Maybe. The Tom Baker years kind of got off to a rocky start with a little bit of a skewed hangover from the Pertwee years. Moving on from that debut with the new TARDIS team in place and the new Doctor firmly at the helm, we leave behind the characteristics that defined the third Doctor's era and go into something different. Now, maybe you're thinking that what I'm about to say is that we go into the fourth Doctor's era, but actually, watching the arc in space, I get really strong Troughton vibes. It's basically a base under siege with an irritable commander who has a secret, a glamorous woman in a position of authority, and the TARDIS team of three exploring and getting into scrapes on a space station. After so long on Earth, or at least always returning to it, these feel like really strong reminders of the late 1960s. Now, the constant base under siege format did become a bit of a trend, certainly in season 5. So am I glad to return to it? Well, I kind of am, in a sort of like fuzzy nostalgic kind of way. Enough time has passed for this to not feel repetitive, and enough time has passed for it to remind me that there is merit in this format, just not inconsistently regurgitating it. But it's been years, and revisiting this sort of setting feels valid. What it doesn't feel, however, is like a fresh step forward into the unknown, like a brand new beginning. It's not a massive step backwards though, not at all. After all, Pertwee had been totemic in the role, and so it makes sense for the new boy to be eased into the rules and various forms the show can take. And interestingly, Tom is the first Doctor they seem to do this for. Both Troughton and Pertwee were sort of like just thrown in, no messing, whereas Tom feels like he's being given the opportunity to learn how to be the Doctor. So yeah, there's a detectable echoing of the second Doctor's era running throughout, and it's actually used to quite good effect. I mean, one of my biggest criticisms of The Wheel in Space was how long it actually took to get going, with the Doctor and Jamie laboriously trudging through that shuttle, eating pork and beef and making damn sure we know what vegetables they had with it. But there is a big difference between lagging and taking your time. Here, the three of them exploring feels like a really good and atmospheric beginning to the story, because it takes time in letting them do that. It doesn't feel like drudgery, it captures the spirit of space adventure as the Doctor, Sarah and Harry try to work out exactly where they are. And a boon to all this is that we're sort of seeing it through the eyes of Harry, and by going at this sort of like slower pace, it sort of like serves to reacclimatise us with this type of Doctor Who story. On the subject of Dr. Sullivan, Harry is a very good character to have around, particularly as the show negotiates that tricky transition between two Doctors. Like, we all know that the arrival of a new companion means the rules of the show have to be laid out again, serving as both a way into the show for the new character and as a reminder for those of us at home, and so having someone new to learn those rules gives the story a focus. More importantly, by having a new Doctor explain those new rules, it cements Tom in the role in a way that watching him go about business as usual with Sarah might not have done. Certainly might not have done as effectively. Sure, we'd have accepted it as their friendship readjusted to the seismic change while they went about solving the mystery and fighting the Wirren, but this feels more subtle in a way, or like sleight of hand. We find ourselves accepting the new Doctor because he seems so in control as he shows the universe to his new friend Harry. It's a further help then that Harry also takes to the time travel aspect of the show very easily indeed. His reactions to it not only make us believe that the Doctor is still our Doctor, but they also make us believe that Harry's a worthy addition to the family. He's like Ian, ever so very decent and upstanding and always wanting to see good prevail.
Is she of value?
Of value? She's a human being like ourselves. What sort of question's that?
Is a splendid reaction to being asked if Sarah is valuable. He didn't really have much time to shine in the previous story and jumped aboard at the end in what could have been an afterthought, but here we see exactly why he's come along for the ride, and we're glad he has. Now, there's a reason that he's so like Ian, and also a reason why he's along for the ride, and that is originally they were going to cast an older actor as the Fourth Doctor, and then they didn't by casting Tom. And so Harry was definitely there to fulfill the kind of action man role in the same way that Ian was for the First Doctor. But it's like such a testament to Ian Marter that the way he plays Harry and his chemistry with Elizabeth Sladen and Tom Baker mean that even though that plan changed, and even though they went younger with the Fourth Doctor, and the reason that Harry was conceived as a character anyway was, in inverted commas, no longer needed, Harry still doesn't feel superfluous. Like, Harry feels like an organic part of the team. His presence in the show also repositions Sarah a little bit. Like, she's the old hand. She's able to get into scrapes on her own, and when she becomes separated from the Doctor and Harry, it feels organic because it's Harry who needs to stay and learn from the Doctor, and that's better done just the two of them. So off Sarah pops to be put in considerable danger. And this is obviously functional on a script level, but it also becomes quite distressing in its execution, especially when there's oh-so-calm voices tell her she's about to pass beyond life.
In a few minutes, you will pass beyond life.
Good old Holmes managing to execute a scripting necessity with such flair, I expected nothing less. I'm in danger of repeating myself, but I honestly don't think I can think of a writer who's written for the show up until this point who's had a better grasp on Doctor Who than Robert Holmes. So much work is put in to make the characters and the setting feel real, which is a real strength of his. In fact, so much work is put in that it feels like no work has been put in at all, in the best possible way. And it may lack his usual tendency for comic overtones, but his talents are put to use elsewhere, and there's still, a huge amount of wit layered through the script.
Personally, I consider your destruction is not necessary.
Thanks very much.
It's like one of those little touches that we don't notice when they're not there, but when they are there, do they help elevate everything. He also, as I've discussed before, seems to have a grasp on the character of the Doctor, which is slightly different from many others. It's a grasp I think is the best grasp as well. But of course I do, because Holmes is my favourite writer for him so far. When he has Sarah say...
He talks to himself sometimes because he's the only one who understands what he's talking about.
It's another one of those nutshell descriptions of a character so large that only a writer with a very firm understanding and love of the character can effortlessly drop in. The quality of the script also then gives Tom a gift that no other Doctor has had this early in their run since Hartnell. Most Doctors have to wait for a brilliant soliloquy, but here, in only his second story...
Ready to outsit eternity. They're indomitable. Indomitable.
Enhanced by a beautiful score and directed incredibly well, he muses on the indomitability of the human race. One of those speeches you cannot begrudge being included in clip shows to highlight and define a performance or story. Tom rises to the challenge and knocks it out of the park. He makes it sound respectful, like he's in absolute awe of the Homo sapiens that he's talking about. But he also makes it a little bit chilling as well, as if he's really wary about them as well. And like I said, Robot didn't give me a firm foundation for him to springboard off. But here, unequivocally, we are in safe hands with Tom Baker as the Doctor. And throughout this story, he seems to be finding his stride way more than in the first story, because that first story was like a hazy hangover of the previous regime, whereas here, I guess, for want of a better term, he gets to cut loose a little bit and forge his own path, or begin to at least. It's his first proper foray with his own team as his own Doctor in his own story, and it works tremendously. When Noah has him at gunpoint, the way he reasons with him is splendid, and he is splendid at it. He never really got to properly face off against a villain in his first story, yet when Noah, as the Wirren, is talking to him over the tannoy, he gets his moment and he shows just what a good Doctor he can be. And there's a very clear moment in this story which shows me how different his approach to the part is from Pertwee's. When the Doctor is spurring Sarah on through the vent by being mean to her, he plays it to perfection. Now, I made mention a couple of times, mainly I think in The Demons and Mind of Evil, that I didn't care for John Pertwee's sort of brusque nature with Jo sometimes. And some of his defenders in the comments, some of them were kinder than others. Some were quite patronising, like, well, you've got to understand the Doctor's an alien and he's trapped in one place, and obviously he's going to be short with people. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but John Pertwee through his performance never actually made me believe that was the reason, and it always came across as just a little bit dickish. Like, I know the Doctor's circumstances. My issue was with John Pertwee's performance, and here, had John Pertwee played it, it could have come across like that. But Tom has the right pitch for it. He pitches it perfectly. Like, we know why he's doing it. There's no room for, oh, well, the Doctor's being a little bit unpleasant, which there was with Pertwee. With Tom, when he's berating her, he's still got a twinkle in his eye. And this is one of those stories where whenever I watch it, it's like, it makes me realise how interesting an idea the concept of regeneration is. So it's a huge thing, a huge idea, but the show just carries on. And I know that the hugeness of the idea enables the show to carry on, but once it happens, the show literally just does carry on. The Doctor is the Doctor, as he has always been, and this is at a point before Tom Baker became so synonymous with the role of the Doctor in the public consciousness. Like, he's remembered now as almost the definitive Doctor by so many. But here at this point, he's just the latest in a line of 4. And it's lovely. I made mention of how I get strong Troughton vibes from the story, but I don't think I would have ever, if you'd have asked me, said that I got really strong echoes of Hartnell in Tom's performance. But watching this story this time, there they are, as clear as day. His delight at solving how to destroy the Wirrn is, I think, the most distinct example of that.
Electricity. Only by electricity.
I mean, that screams Hartnell to me. Again, it seems strange to say it, but even though Tom looks to be thriving away from the leftovers of his predecessor's reign, he still isn't completely his own Doctor yet. I mean, he gives a great performance, no question, but he's still finding his way, and is, in a lot of ways, like a patchwork of the other Doctors, and that isn't meant as a slight at all. I just find it really strange that the most recognisable of all the Doctors begins his time on the show almost as the most unsure of them all so far. I find that completely and utterly fascinating, and it's this that has kind of like re-energised me after a bit of a rough patch on the marathon so far. In story terms, there were 4 there that I thought were underwhelming, and this one is a stronger story, no question. But also, like, I'm finding it so rejuvenating, being on the journey of Tom's evolution from shakiest start to largest command of the role. It's the most interesting thing about the show at the moment for me, and like I said, I do think The Ark in Space is a superior story from before. It's really well plotted, it's really well written, it's really well acted. That's helped by the fact that the Wirrn birth cycle is utterly horrific, which gives scope for some really good on-the-nose body horror, and that gives Noah himself a really good arc as well. But while all of that is true, it's not the thing that's engaging me the most at the moment. The thing that's engaging me the most at the moment is Tom Baker as the new Doctor. It's how the show is shifting itself to accommodate this new paradigm, the new Doctor, the new TARDIS team. And while it's not doing it like super smoothly, like, it's still fascinating as a result. But while that is the thing I'm most interested in at the moment, this video is about The Ark in Space. Now, it is while watching The Ark in Space that I noticed all of this stuff and got excited about it. So I do think it's valid to discuss that. But I also want to talk a little bit about how The Ark in Space is just an incredibly strong story of Doctor Who, even if this is coming a bit later on in Tom Baker's reign. And I wouldn't have had that interesting glimpse of Tom Baker in his early days. This would still be a great story. One of the things that you could ding it with is the effects. I mean, you could do that with a lot of Doctor Who, but obviously they wrap the actors in green bubble wrap. But the thing is, right, they look, if you squint, like green pustules. Is actually quite a good idea to wrap them in green bubble wrap. And one of my biggest problems with the Invasion of the Dinosaurs was obviously the dinosaurs. Now, you could also level that at the Wirrn, but the thing is the Wirrn are made-up creatures and they can look however they want to look. Dinosaurs have to look, I guess, like a certain way. But with the Wirrn, and certainly the first time we see one, it's dead, and it's quite an effective prop. So while it doesn't move as well when we see one later on, it's been set up enough that that doesn't really matter. So even the perceived drawbacks being the effects, they're not a drawback for me. The arc in space just works. And if I hadn't already been getting 60s vibes from the arc in space, we finish with something straight out of 1960s Doctor Who, and that is a segue into the next story. After 389 episodes, it does feel like Doctor Who is still repositioning itself into a new version of the show. It's just not quite there yet. And it's brilliant to watch that happening. It's a really exciting transition. And so watching Tom become the Doctor and Doctor Who become the new Doctor Who, it's endlessly fascinating. And like I said, after 4 stories in a row that I found underwhelming, this has been an absolute joy.
They're indomitable. Indomitable.
I've already said that it doesn't really impact the story as a whole, but it is the least successful part of it, and that is the Wirren turning to face the Doctor at the end. Dead Wirren looks really effective. Brief glimpse of one works, but a Wirren having a pleasant bobbly stroll, that does threaten to take you out of it. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this spot of reanimation, then you know how YouTube works. Please do like and share. And what do you think of the arc in space? Is it a bold step forward for Doctor Who, or do you get distinct 1960s vibes from it as well? Is Tom firing on all cylinders, or is it incredibly charming to watch him figure it all out in his early days? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for a rematch with the Sontarans. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll meet you in 10,000 years at Trafalgar Square.